as businesses evolve, we have an opportunity for people to create an environment of work that's better for them than the old model that we've been, experiencing for the past 50, 60 years. So
Yo, what's up, y'all? It's Nitro Careers, coming at you fast like morning dew, on a mission to help you find your flow, with careers that make you scream, let's go! We talk to folks who made it big and dig deep into what makes them tick. From tech to biz, we cover it all, so you can rise up and never fall.
Hello and good evening, Yasmeen. Welcome to Nitro Careers. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm great. I'm happy to be here. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. So we are going to be discussing about captivating careers from across the world and bring awareness to the masses about what opportunities lies there that are unexplored or lesser known to people. When I was growing up, when someone came and asked me what do I want to become when I grow up, I would say professional athlete or a businessman or a pilot. But no one is going to say, oh, I want to be in human resources and I want to do change management. But now I have realized that there's a lot of potential for change management professionals because they create a huge impact in organizations and they're high in demand. And more importantly, they pay well according to Glassdoor, which we will discuss later. But knowing you are a very successful change management professional. You have your own company and you work with some of the top companies in North America. Would you like to share your brief introduction about yourself and what it means to be a change management professional?
Sure. Thank you, Shiv. So I have been doing change management for many years. It started off as a human resources professional and just naturally fell into project work, which helped me move over to change management. I specialize in organizational development. I would like to continue the good work of helping organizations thrive into the future. A lot of my falling into change management began when I was faced with many problems in my organization, even as an HR assistant. I found that I was very good at solving these problems, a lot of them relating to culture, people management, and leadership development. So it just seemed like the natural path for me. And it's funny that you mentioned about your dream growing up. I too never thought that I would grow up to be an HR change manager. I wanted to be a veterinarian or a lawyer. So, I think our tastes evolve kind of with our personalities as we grow up and choose our careers.
Would you say that some of your personality and characteristics led you to this kind of work?
I definitely would say, considering change management and human resources, I think you really have to have a certain set of soft skills, those being that you have a knack for interpersonal relationships. You can gain trust and build rapport with people. That's very important. As change management, especially in human resources, is really helping guide the people side of change. Those people skills are very important. Whereas you would have someone who is in IT and they're very smart and technical, they may lack the soft skills or the people skills to help move change initiatives even within IT along on the people side. So I think that it's very important that you have, that you can relate to people very well. I wouldn't say that you need to be an extrovert per se, but that you definitely need to have an interest in people and ensuring that they are carefully managed through change.
That's fantastic. So when I imagine a change management professional, they need to be able to speak the language of different kind of professions and different roles. So you would talk differently when you approach a C-level executive as opposed to a software engineer. But you need to be able to motivate them both for the change to be implemented successfully.
Absolutely. I don't know that I would say that I change my language or how I speak with them. I think it's just that the C-level executive we would just be having different conversations. So the conversations about change that I would be having with an executive level person would be significantly different. I'd be talking about how the change affects them, their bottom line. We would be talking about very change technical pieces about scope and how the project is going in relation to the budget and timelines. Whereas I would adjust my language or my approach with, say, a frontline person who I would be helping them. Do you have the training that you need? This is what's coming down the line. So the conversations that we would be having would be different. I would adjust those to suit who I'm talking to and their role in the organization.
It's very interesting. Now, I have a very naive question to ask you.
Sure.
How would you measure this change?
There are plenty of tools that will tell you in change management, and ProSci's got some great ones that will tell you how well your change initiatives are going. You can use the ADKAR model, for example. The ADKAR is a very technical way to see where your barrier points are if the change is going well. Like, have you created desire? Are people aware of the change? However, I feel like because of the human nature and the human touch required to deal with change, I think we need to take a different approach. I prefer to go down to the people level and just ask them directly, whether that's surveys or just in conversation, how are you feeling about things? And you really learn to gauge how people are feeling and where they're at in the change by just talking with them. When you're dealing with people, it's a little bit different than just like a data report. Sometimes you really need to get down on their level. And I'm sure as a people data professional, you understand that.
Yes, absolutely. And sometimes there are gaps in data that are not captured when you have more personalized approach by directly talking to an employee. The surveys are not always designed in a way that could holistically gather all the information needed to really see what's happening. That's always been a problem with a data-driven approach. So you made a really interesting point there. Now, do you want to give us a brief introduction about ProSci? Am I saying that right?
You know what? There's different ways to say it. Some people say ProSci, some people say ProSci. So I think they both work.
Awesome. So how do they work? Like, are they the foundations of the change management practices? Is it a company? How does one get certified through ProSci or ProSci?
No, that's a great question. So I would say that there are many different paths that you can take to become a certified change practitioner, it's called. It's just that I chose ProSci because they seem to have quite a good reputation in the industry, in applying for roles or in bidding on contracts. ProSci seems to come up quite often, I would say 9 times out of 10, as the leader specifically asked for in certification. So that naturally led me there, as that seems to be what the industry wanted. It's a 3-day course that you take. They have different intakes. You can take weekends. They have early mornings or afternoons. The cost is about $4,000 to $5,000, depending whether you do it virtually or in person. It's a very heavy 3-day course, but at the end of it, you're a certified change practitioner. And then you can go on and take roles and with enough hours become a chartered change professional through ACMP. So I wouldn't say that once you get your certification that you would feel 100% confident to go do a large enterprise change initiative. It definitely takes some practice and time to kind of understand how to do change and then navigating the different people in cultures in the organization that you're working with.
That is very insightful. So now you mentioned that you need to have a certain amount of hours to be a certified change practitioner. How would you charge your clients while you're still in that process, or is it more of a training that you need to go through before you could actually charge the employer or client?
No, as soon as you get that certification, you are a certified change practitioner. However, I think the amount that you would charge your clients is heavily dependent on the scope and complexity of the change initiative that you're working on. So, for example, if we're just looking to move a smaller office of 5 to 15 people over to Microsoft Office 365, that is a smaller scope. It's more controlled. It's more simple. You would be able to do that initiative, but you may not be able to get or ask top dollar as a consultant for a project because it's quite a simple and small scope. However, if you had a larger enterprise and you're having to do the same thing or moving them over to a new human capital management software system, and you have thousands of employees and they're spread out all over the country, then you have that's increased scope and complexity, and you have much more room to ask for higher pay at that point. Pay rates can vary from depending on if you're an employee or a consultant. They will vary.
Interesting. You brought the pay rate up because that's the juicy aspect of the career, right? And I was looking at Glassdoor, and according to Glassdoor, the average pay for a beginner in change management industry is $74,000 all the way to $120,000. Now, I know the rates can vary based on the city that you live in or the industry that you work for, or even sometimes it comes down to like specific projects that you work for. But what would you say the right rate is for someone who's beginning in this profession as opposed to someone who has, say, 5 to 10 years experience?
That's a great question. I would say right off the bat, I think you could safely ask for, and this is across the country, mind you, I think as a minimum, you can expect to get $50 an hour or about $100,000 a year. I have not seen a change manager position that is like a change lead starting in the 70,000 range. I would, however, expect to see a change coordinator, someone who supports the change manager and facilitating tactical work, would sit comfortably in that range, yes. And then the rates would be significantly more as a independent contractor or for consulting change management work.
That is beautiful. Now, here comes another interesting question. Let's say that I'm in my late teens, just completing college, and I'm coming across this fancy profession called change management. I'm super inspired, super excited. I have all the people skills, but I have zero clue on how it works. Where should I start? What should be the first step that I should be taking?
Well, you definitely would like to... Sorry, so you have gone to school and you've received your change management certification?
Oh, no. I'm just completing school.
Okay, so you're just out of school. I would go and get your change management certification. Now, again, I have a preference for ProSci, but you don't necessarily need to take ProSci. There are other methodologies in schools. Just make sure that they're certified and just make sure that they're observed in your industry and by potential employers, because I think that that's really important. You would go and get your certification, and then you can start applying for work right away. I would suggest, though, just to help you kind of get into the industry and to learn, it's no secret for anybody who's fresh out of school. You have some tools in your tool belt. However, you do need to gain some field experience before you just start going to lead projects. So I would suggest that you take on more of a supportive role, so supporting another change manager in initiative. If you are unable to find work as a change management support capacity, if you can even get in as a project manager support position where you're supporting a project manager through change, that will also give you a handful of skills. And with that being said, I would highly recommend for any change manager to strongly consider getting their project management certification, becoming a certified PMP, because change management is more about the people side of change, whereas project management will give you the tools on the process of managing projects on the task side.
So this is very interesting. So once someone has a good level of experience being a change management professional, they would transform or evolve to become a certified project management professional.
I think so. So for me, currently, I'm one of those people. I'm a change manager, and I went to school and studied human resources. However, as I've been doing more and more change projects, I realized how important it is for me to work very closely with the project manager on any project that I'm working on. And it's very good for a change manager not only to understand the people side of change, but as I had mentioned, to also understand the project management side of change. And I think that if you have both in your tool belt, then it just makes you a more powerful, well-rounded professional through change, because then you understand both sides of the process. I find that it's helped me better understand the thought process of the project manager that I'm working alongside. And I think it's just a complementary skill that complements the change management piece very nicely.
Interesting. Interesting. Now, I'm very curious about this. So you talked about project management, and now also earlier you mentioned about potential employers. So would this role kind of differ with different employers? And if so, can you provide us an example of how change management would look like for a small company, like say with employees less than like 200 people in the company, as opposed to a company with more than 10,000 employees?
No, that's a very good question. So I think the work is the same. However, the way that you approach it is a little bit different. So with a smaller organization, which I actually prefer, small to medium enterprise, as a change manager, you have a smaller group of people, so you're able to connect with them on a personal level more often and more intimately than you can, say, with a larger enterprise where there's so many employees scattered all over the place. I feel like it has given me a boost in my ability to bring people along through change because I've been able to connect with them on a personal level. They know who I am. I'm not just some change manager in an office telling them what to do. We're all humans. I'm sure you understand that human connection. People are more willing to cooperate and hear you if they have that personal relationship with you. And that's something that proves very difficult in larger enterprise initiatives.
That's very interesting. Now, in terms of potential employers, are there employers who hire specifically for change management professionals? Or are there like employers that change management professionals would ideally want to go to as their dream employer?
I think what we see a lot in change management, that's a struggle. But I feel like we're kind of gaining momentum in the last 5 to 10 years, is that when you have a project or initiative, typically employers will just think, okay, we have a project, let's get a project manager to help support that. But year over year, they're seeing that their projects are failing or that the changes are not sustained because they have not taken into consideration the people side of change. So I would say over the last maybe 5 to 10 years, there's been more emphasis and an understanding, or a nod, if you will, to change management, and understanding that it takes more than a project manager to move a project along, because you also have to bring those people along. So they're starting to recognize if there's a project, we need both project manager as well as change manager to support that.
Beautiful. It makes sense to have both go hand in hand when going through this massive project. And I bet it's the same for a small company as well as a large institution with tens of thousands of people.
It doesn't matter if there's 2 people or 2,000. In order to affect change with people, we need people focus.
Now, you mentioned people focus. I have a very interesting question for you. Let's say that you are a change management professional working alongside a project manager, but there is this resistance that you face with stakeholders. How would you deal with situations like that?
I think it's really important. And again, bringing into what I had said before about change managers need to have an understanding and a respect for project manager work. And I'll say the same for the project manager needs to have a good understanding and a respect for what change managers do and work together. So the project success will really depend on, I would say there's 3 really important things: the project manager, the change manager, and the sponsor. How effectively are they working together and collaborating? If quite often we'll find that the project manager just kind of wants to push through the change and check off the task, and that's fine. That's their job, is to get through those tasks. But it's really great if the project manager can understand, the change managers here, and listen and understand that we can't always just push people through change quickly. Sometimes we need to understand, we need to take a little more time for that human aspect, to get people more training, to have more conversations, to explain why the change is needed before. And the more that we push people through without having those conversations and making people understand, the more the project will derail. So I think just working together and really making sure that everyone understands the importance of their specific roles and that they're working together in collaboration is key.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Have you had any fascinating experience being a change management professional, or have you had like anyone say like the most ridiculous thing, like when you're trying to do a massive change?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that you'll find, and I'm even in HR, just being an HR professional as well. Like, people are just people. There are so many different people. They all have different experiences at work, before they got to work. Everyone has such a different life and experience that trying to navigate them all can be challenging. And sometimes things will happen and it just blows up in your face, but you just kind of have to laugh and just take a deep breath and acknowledge that you are dealing with people. It's not a machine. It's not a task that you're checking off in a spreadsheet. You're dealing with people. So you're going to have to be prepared to deal with the nature that humans bring. So I think if you can navigate that, and if you have that understanding and you're just strategic and get down on the human level, I think that you can kind of navigate those things better and help people along.
That is beautiful. You put it so eloquently in a way. So what is one of the most successful change management initiative that you have led and something that you're proud of?
I would say, without getting into client names, I would say overall, the best change management initiatives that I have are ones where the leadership, the executive leadership, the heart and soul of the company is in support. And they are in support not just by providing funding and hiring people to do change, but in support by showing up for that change, modeling that change, being the change champion, like living and breathing those values and those changes. I think when employees see leadership modeling that, I think it just makes our job so much easier.
Interesting. Now I have a question. Again, it's going to be a naive question, but I'm asking from a perspective of someone who's trying to venture into this career. How does a typical day look like for someone, a change management professional, at the beginning of a project, at somewhere between the project and at the final stages of the project? Let's start with the beginning of the project. What would an average day or typical day look like?
I think you're spending a lot of your time planning and designing the change, a lot of meetings, a lot of discussions. I think change managers need to have the ability to ask probing strategic questions about the people side of change. How will this impact people? Are we going to develop training for them for this change? How are we going to communicate this change? What is the best way to communicate this change? How many changes has the organization gone through before I got here? Assess like how change fatigued people are. All of those questions are so important, engaging on how you're going to design, plan, and approach your change from a change manager perspective. It's also a great time to build rapport with your project manager and really get to know and understand leadership and your sponsor, because taking into consideration the culture of the organization that you're trying to affect change in will be very helpful in creating a plan that aligns with that culture.
Awesome. Now, how would a typical day look like when the project has began and it's somewhere in the intermediary stage?
No, that's great. I think we're going to, because at this point we've got the plan going and we've all kind of been working in our little silos with the leadership making this plan. Now that we're rolling it out, a lot of the middle part is just communicating. This is what's been decided. This is what's coming. And then the backup piece is gauging how our people are taking that change. How are you feeling about the change? We're rolling this out in 2 weeks. We're going to be doing training soon. How are you feeling about the training? How are you feeling about the change? And just really digging into your people and trying to understand, how can I support you better? And then providing that feedback to the project manager. Okay, it sounds like our people are, they're not clear on why we need this change. So let's not push forward on the project any further until we have an opportunity to regroup, reassess, and determine how we're going to help bring them along past that barrier point. And then talking to leadership. Okay, people are starting to get worried. They're not sure what's going on. We need you to come in and speak to people and put them at ease. And we quite often as change managers have to put on another hat and advise them. And what can you say and what can you do based on that feedback to kind of help put people at ease and bring them along?
That's wonderful. And do you, before we move on to the next stage of the project, I have a very interesting question. Do you often feel that the leadership has a direct impact on change when when the C-level executive or the project manager, when they talk to employees. Do you think there's an impact or change in perspective from employees' side?
I think it is the most highly impacting piece of the change. It's in change management, we call this sponsorship. And the sponsor is obviously the leader, but then they have what we call sponsorship coalition, which is influential leaders, people leaders. It could be anyone with influence and authority in the organization that needs to champion this change. Because if it's just coming from senior leadership and the majority of people don't interact with that person very much, or the executive leader is not making effort to pour that excitement and the importance of the initiative and making it known to the broader organization, there's going to be a very big disconnect. If employees on the front lines are seeing that managers are not happy about the change, they're not championing it with the positivity that, say, the change champion or the project manager is, there's a disconnect. So I think that is the key route to help bring people along through change, is to see and hear and feel in their culture that this is a good move and that they should be excited about it too.
That's fascinating. So what I'm understanding is the executive sponsor or the leader should believe in the change themselves, communicate the change, or like show their enthusiasm and passion so that employees can resonate with that change and feel inspired by this project.
They should absolutely be showcasing that to the people, because we know that culture is more, we can say, I would like to have a culture that is positive and open and flexible, but we know in HR, and as you know, in data has shown that it really comes from the leadership. We can say that we have a culture that's like a certain way, but if it really, culture comes down to what is leadership doing? What are they saying? What are their actions? What is the feel of the organization? And leadership determines that.
Exactly, and well said. So I'm super curious to know what happens during the final stages of the project. How does a typical day look like?
So I would say in the final stages, the change has been made. And you would think that it's time to pack up and your work is done, but that's not true. At this point, right through the end, like through the middle stage, we're still gauging how people are feeling about the change. Do we need to provide more training? Where could we have, what missteps did we make during this process, and how could we improve for next time? Have we done things more efficiently? How could we have communicated better? Did we do this too soon? It's very valuable lessons learned information that we are gauging and assessing at this point so that we can do better next time.
Brilliant. So now I'm assuming that some of these lessons can carry over to different types of projects and even different types of companies, right?
Yes. And so like many projects, we do one change and then it's done. And there's other projects that are that have multiple releases, or iterative releases, we would say. So you might release one software and then have a very quick turnaround time to gauge how that's going. And then in a few short weeks or months, you may be doing a second release or a phase 3, or you could have, any number of iterations. So I think it's always important to reflect. That last part is so important to gauge if it's time to move on to the next step, or how can we pivot quickly and make adjustments so that we do even better on the next release or iteration.
Interesting, very interesting. So this leads me to the next question. What happens after the project is complete? Again, this might be a very naive question, but let's say that someone joins a company like Facebook as a change management consultant, and they're doing a huge implementation work. So they need a change management consultant. But after the work is complete, what would a change manager?
Well, there's a series of reporting that we will create and give feedback to leadership if they're interested. As a change manager, you will also reflect on your own lessons learned on how you approach things, or with every project, there's snags and frustrations, and just taking a look, engaging at, how can I improve as a change leader for next time, or just trying to gauge people's reactions. I think you really reflect on the people that you've affected during this change. And I think the best thing that you can do is really study that, be self-aware, and be aware of others on any little reaction or way that you could have improved, and just consider that for next time. You're also meeting with your project managers to determine, asking the same questions. How did we work together? How can we work better together? Do you have any feedback for me, project manager? Oh, I have some feedback for you, Mr. Project Manager, Miss Project Manager. You're talking to leadership about having the same conversations, lessons learned. They may request some reporting from you as well so that they have that. And then just getting your communications and all of your documentation that you've been kind of processing and developing over the term of the project, and just ensuring that that's stored or destroyed appropriately.
Interesting. Now I'm super curious. Why should they be destroyed?
Sometimes during a change, depending on what the change is, it could be highly confidential. It could be something that's serious, like an investigation into the company that required a certain level of change due to employee relation or workplace harassment or violence issue. And so you would digitally store, but some things may need to be destroyed. It really just depends on the policy and really what the sponsor who hired you to do the project wants done with that information. As change managers, we're really hired to provide them a service. We can always make the recommendation that they store these things appropriately, whatever that means to them. But at the end of the day, they really get to decide what they want to do.
That's very interesting. Now, I want to take a step back and think from a Gen Z's perspective, who are currently entering the workforce and are trying to understand all these different careers. Now, as a Gen Z, I would want to know that, like, hey, I'm getting paid well, which we covered, and
Yes.
I have a lot of demand, which is again covered. Now, what about travel opportunity?
I mean, I think, Shiv, with the world of remote work, you have the ability, like, possibilities are endless. You have the ability to work remotely with almost any employer in the entire globe. And I think that Gen Z is very creative. So I'm very interested to see what personal touch, what generational touch that they put on the approach to change management. But again, you're an employee, you're a professional providing a service. So I think the possibilities are endless. It just depends on the culture and the leadership of who's hiring you to do the work. Some employers want you to be in office because they really believe that having you physically there will provide more value. Some are happy with remote work. Some are happy with a hybrid type of work. It really just depends on what the leader wants from you. I think Gen Z, and I kind of touched on this, but I didn't finish my thought. Gen Z is a new generation and they're very creative. At some point, just like the baby boomers before us, our ways, our approaches that have been working so well for us for 20 years are going to become outdated, obsolete, and it's not going to have the effect that we want to as the years go on and we're dealing with a younger generation because we're disconnected from them. So I think that we have a responsibility to adapt ourselves and understand what Gen Z wants and how we can adapt our styles to suit that and to bring out the best in change for them.
That's very interesting. Now, you made a point about remote work and being on site depending on the leaderships. How does the market look like? Let's say North America, and also we can talk about like some international companies. Are they more open to remote work these days, or how does the trend look like for change management professional?
I would say, just speaking personally, I have had no issues finding remote work. I think change managers kind of have an advantage at the moment because they're so high in demand. As you can see from business, everything's evolving and it's evolving so quickly. We are just in this huge stage of change in the business world. So I think that gives any career that's in high demand some negotiating power to kind of negotiate the terms of how they want to work. I also know that Gen Z is very, very fond of remote work. So I think that is something that will appeal to them. You can do change from anywhere. Change is happening all over the world. So it's not just a role that fits the North American market, say. You can go anywhere in the world, any continent in the world, and there will be change management work there for you.
That's very interesting. And to a lot of our listeners and Gen Z in particular, supply and demand is going to be a huge insight for them. Just knowing that, like, hey, where do I need to focus my learning on? How do I grow in my career? It all comes down to, like, which one is going to make me a better pay, which one is going to give me a good work-life balance, and which one is going to give me a strong purpose in life. So this will be the last question of our podcast, and it all comes down to what makes you wake up every morning and gives you that intrinsic happiness or satisfaction in this line of work.
No, that's a really good question. I think because it ties into my first passion, which is human resources. I really enjoy working with people. And I know that's crazy to say. Everyone's afraid of the HR lady. When people see HR coming, they run and hide. But I really want, and I try to connect with people. I keep it professional, but I really want them to know that I'm someone that wants to help them. Yes, HR works for the employer, but our job is really to kind of bridge the gap and align people to the business. And the only way to do that is to like people and talk to people and genuinely want to connect with people. So I think because of that root of HR and my passion for people, I'm a natural extrovert. I think it's easy for me to get up and go talk to people and tell them what's happening and why it's exciting and how it will benefit them. I find much more fulfillment in that than being stuck alone behind a desk updating spreadsheets.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. No, I'm
people to make the world go round, right? So that being said, if you're an introvert person and you don't like talking to people and you don't like confrontation and difficult conversations kind of make you like queasy, then I wouldn't recommend the field to those people. Definitely, you have to have kind of an aptitude to have difficult conversations and talk to people. So that seems to be not a problem for me. It's a natural thing for me. So that helps me get out of bed every morning. I actually truly enjoy the work. I think, especially with change in HR, there's so much you can do to help organizations just thrive. And it's not just organizations like from the business sense, but the people in the organization. As businesses evolve, we have an opportunity for people to create an environment of work that's better for them than the old model that we've been, experiencing for the past 50, 60 years. So it's just a great time to be in change management.
That is so exciting and fascinating. And I'm thrilled to have had this amazing conversation with you. And for anybody listening to this podcast, how would someone reach out to you? Can you share your website or?
They can check out my website at transitionhrconsulting.com. I invite anyone to follow my business page on LinkedIn or connect and reach out to me directly. I'd love to have a chat with you. I'm always sharing kind of fun tips and stories and content for both employees and business owners. So just love for you to join the conversation and engage in change with us.
Well, thank you, Yasmeen, for joining me today. And I'm so grateful to have had this wonderful conversation, and I had so much fun doing it.
No, it's been a pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us today. Follow this channel for more content.